All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you from all of us here in Chicago. The ALCM board is actually meeting in person. Most of us are here, and so we're kind of spread out between two rooms, and that's why some of us have masks on. You might be wondering about that. But we are delighted that you've chosen to join us this evening, and we will be taking up one item of business, a specially called meeting, which is to approve changes to our bylaws, which have been distributed a while back. I'll talk about those in just a second. Some just general housekeeping things. I think most of us know these things from Zoom now. It's second nature, right? But sometimes we forget. If you would please mute yourself, that helps keep the background noise to a minimum so that you can hear and we can hear all that is going on. If you have questions that you want to raise, if you use the chat function, put those in, we will have those monitored during the meeting so that we can make sure we address them all and everybody can hear them and hear the answers to those questions. And it was reminded to us that if you have other things open on your laptop or your computer, you may want to close those down, as they do tend to slow down and maybe cause connection issues that would give you problems hearing or keeping a consistent connection. So again, welcome. I am Kevin Barger, for those who have not had the privilege of meeting. I'm currently the president of ALCM, and we are excited to be here tonight as we cap off what has really literally been years and years of work. I have been involved in various degrees on the board for almost a decade, and this has been a source of discussion for almost all those 10 years. And this actually came and started as the regional presidents came to us and said, there's confusion over what it is we're supposed to do. And we made some changes in terms of the presidential and vice president and the director at large structure for the regions. And just again, there was just confusion over what those regional presidents were supposed to do. And they didn't really feel like they had a defined path as to where they were supposed to go. So that's when we started looking at this. The board had several discussions over those past years. And then we made a strong suggestion last year where we wanted to look at expanding the board. And to be clear, this is not getting rid of regions. Regions will still exist. What we are proposing is that we are making changes that are to our regional office structure so that those would not exist anymore, but we would still have geographic representation from across the country. And we think that's a really good idea for various reasons, which we'll talk about in a second. As we move forward, there are changes to the bylaws that would have to happen. And so we appointed a committee that was going to work on those. Julie Grindle led that work with that committee. And basically they came back to us and said, here's what needs to happen to the bylaws in order to make the proposed changes to the board structure, which is really expanding the board. And I think we have a slide that we can put up that is going to capture some of this here. Can you all see that, hopefully? First and foremost, one of the things that we've talked about, and you've heard this before in our publications, in our surveys and things that have come out, we wanted more diverse voices on the board. So diversity takes many forms. So that's probably all the obvious things that we would think of with diversity in terms of ethnicity or gender or things like that. But also it's diverse voices from geographic representation across the country. So we want to make sure that that is very, very present and deliberate so that all voices are heard from all parts of the country, because things are different in different places. We want to increase board stability. What we realized in our old structure, I guess it's our current structure right now, is that there are times where we could turn over the majority of our board, and that meant that we had almost all new people entering the board with no experience. And that's dangerous because that does not allow us to keep the consistency and keep the momentum to move things forward. And in the past several years, from a financial and a programmatic standpoint, we have expanded tremendously with ALCM. This is a very exciting time. And to be able to keep doing those things and keep moving, we really need to have stability in those voices that are on the board. And then we also wanted to standardize some terms and start dates. And maybe this is just driven by me, but those were all over the place. We actually have to create charts and Venn diagrams to show who gets elected when, what position is up this year. Some terms are 3 years, some terms are 6 years, some terms are 4 years. And that's just confusing. So we have narrowed everything down, and Mike will be telling us a little bit about the details of how that will work. So again, we are excited to be here with this, and Mike's going to go over the details of what will be changing in the bylaws. We are not going to actually read the bylaws to you, but I'll let him tell you more about that. So we're going to switch places, and Mike will give you some detailed information.
Thank you, Kevin. Sorry, folks, I had to get my computer to work the way it's supposed to work before I stepped on over here. So if there are a few glitches in our technology as we go forward, just please give us a little grace. We're doing our best, but nobody is quite perfect. As Kevin said, we don't intend tonight to read through the proposed changes in the bylaws. We hope that you have taken a look at those before you joined our meeting tonight. If you have not and would like to look at them right now, there is a link that should be in the video, in the chat box. So if you follow the link that should be in the chat box, you could call those bylaws up for you to look at the actual wording. So I just intend to kind of walk through the big overview of it. So changes to the current structure. And these bylaws changes basically all deal with the way that we are structured. We are not recommending any changes to the first 3 articles of the bylaws, which to me are the important ones, including our purposes and our membership. So that none of that is being changed. We're basically proposing changes to the bylaws related to the structure, particularly to the way the board of directors is structured and nominated and elected. So for the president and president-elect offices, those are unchanged from what they are now. And to remind you about that, the president serves for a 3-year term. When you're elected to president-elect, you have a 2-year term as president-elect, then a 3-year term as president, followed by a 1-year term as past president. And that will continue. Kevin Barger's term as president is up this year. And so the process will be going forward as usual with that. For the secretary treasurer, which is my position, currently I'm serving a 4-year term, and we are proposing that that be reduced to 3 years. We feel that that maintains the required stability that you want, especially in a treasurer position, because it takes a while to get fully on board with the finances of an organization like ours. 3 years, we feel, especially with the staff that we have on hand now, a full-time executive director, we feel that's plenty of time, and that will bring all of our terms, as you will see, into basically a 3-year cycle. So Kevin, if you could go on. So then the regional presidents and directors at large will change in the new proposal. Currently, we have 4 regional presidents and 2 directors at large. And the language in the new bylaws says that there will be a minimum of 6 directors. So no longer called directors at large, but simply directors. They will be elected nationally, so not to represent necessarily any particular geographic area, but as we will see in a bit, talk a bit more about it, we do certainly intend to keep people on the board from all different parts of the country. We are using the language a minimum of 6 directors. Our intention is to actually make the board larger as quickly as we can. So moving from a total of 9 to a total of 12. But we kept the language kind of using this minimum language so that if the board would decide in 3, 4, 5 years that this larger board really does, or we can't afford it, doesn't work, whatever, and wanted to drop back to 9, they wouldn't need to go through this whole process again. So we simply are setting a minimum number of 6 directors plus 3 officers, and then it could be larger. And the term of all those directors will be increased from 2 years to 3 years. That serves both the idea of stability on the board and also serves to get those elections all in alignment with 3-year cycles. And the start dates for all board members and officers, so directors and officers, will be standardized to August 1st, rather than a mishmash the way it has currently been. So that's kind of where we're going to get. where we will be in a few years once this is all accomplished. But a lot of the changes in the bylaws deal with the transition plan, how you get from 2022 January to 24, 25, once this is all fully implemented. So the transition plan then is basically this. The president-elect, again, are unchanged. Nothing happens with those. All the directors who are currently serving, so there are 6 directors right now, plus me, the secretary treasurer, our terms are all lengthened by 1 year. If you want to rationalize that because you're that type of person, you could say that all we're doing with those directors is changing their terms from 2 to 3 years, kind of retroactively, because we're going to 3-year terms for them in the future. And for me, since I was elected to a 4-year term, and then I'm going to only be 3 years if I run again, well, that would, by lengthening me, I'd be back to 4 years. It'd be kind of, so we can kind of rationalize all that. But in any case, just part of this smooth flowing, we thought if we lengthened all the current directors' terms by a year, it would help things out. And what that would allow us to do then this year, 2022, is to elect 3 new directors to 3-year terms. So that immediately in this first year, we'll expand the board with more diverse voices, with 12 directors instead of just 9. All right. Then in 2023, we'll be up for electing a president-elect, and that would happen in the way that normally happens. The other tricky piece of the transition plan is in 2023, where the board would appoint 2 directors to 1-year terms. That's, on paper or immediately in front of you, not a great idea, because a 1-year term on a board of directors could be sort of a wasted year. Our thoughts about that is we had kind of had 2 different ways to deal with that. One would be to appoint those 2 people to choose folks who have just finished within the last, handful of years, their term of service on the board, so that they really wouldn't need an orientation period in order to be effective board members. We also talked about it could be possible that you would appoint someone to a 1-year term and at the same time talk to them about being elected to a full 3-year term after that, which would also make that first year, a useful year. But by doing that, appointing those 2 directors to 1-year terms, then we would elect 3 new directors to 3-year terms. And then in 2024, we would elect a secretary treasurer. I would be eligible for re-election if I decided to do that, or I could decide not to. In any case, there would be 2 candidates for that office. And then we would elect 3 directors to 3-year terms. Going forward from 2024 then, we would be electing 3 directors every year to a 3-year term. So that's 1/3 of the directors every year, so that there's good turnover on the board with potential for new members, but there's also the potential to have good stability. And then the president-elect and the secretary-treasurer are elected on those 3-year cycles. So the most new board members you would be electing in any year is 4. Out of a 12-person board, we feel that's a good balance between new voices, new ideas, new visions, and stability in managing finances, etc. So that's kind of the electoral process, the way the board would be structured. There are a couple of other changes that we're proposing. Currently, the bylaws specify that there is a standing committee of the board for nominations. And the current nominating committee consists of 4 regional presidents and the immediate past president. The new language that we are proposing, and this is a quote, the president-elect or past president and at least 3 directors and such other voting members of the association as the board shall appoint would constitute the nominating committee. What we are doing with this language is allowing that nominating committee to have members on it who are not on the board of the directors. We want to avoid the idea that the board of directors is just going to self-replicate itself. trade offices back and forth, not let anybody new onto the board. And so by appointing non-board members to the nominating committee, you have a bit of a guarantee that that won't happen. And it is also a way to kind of, I don't know everybody who lives in Region 3. I live in Region 1. If we're looking for a board member from Region 3, we need to have members from Region 3 on the nominating committee. And so the way we structure that nominating committee can really help the way that we ultimately end up with our board representing the association as best it can. And then the nominations will be slightly different than they have been so far. So we will continue to have 2 nominees for all elections for president-elect and for secretary-treasurer. So we just had a special election for president-elect, and we had 2 nominees for that office. That will continue. Those are the most important offices in our association. The directors, on the other hand, will be, quote, elected from a slate recommended by the board of directors. What that means is that the nominating committee and then the board could recommend a single candidate for each director slot rather than having a contested election. That's actually, in full disclosure, I think where the board is headed, what we foresee happening in 2022, because that will allow us to look for people that bring particular voices, particular ideas, particular backgrounds, particular places they are serving, all the kinds of diversity that we have in the association. They could bring that to the board and fill a hole that we have. So frankly speaking, personal opinion, we have way too few women on our board of directors right now. And so by only putting up 1 nominee for a position, we could in effect sort of guarantee that we would have more women on the board. I would think that might be a good thing to do. You would still get to elect. So if the membership did not like a candidate, you would vote yes or no. And if the person got less than 51% of the votes or over 50% of the votes, then the nominating committee would start over. The board would recommend another person, and that could go on until that office was filled. So the power to put members onto the board of directors of the association still ultimately would rest with the membership where it belongs. And then finally, this is not in the bylaws changes, but I think it's helpful information for you about sort of the nominating process and how we kind of right now envision that might work. And the schedule could be something like this, that each fall we would put out a call for the nominations for the offices we needed to fill that year. And that members could nominate themselves, express an interest in an office for themselves or for someone else. And that we would collect those nominations for over several months each fall. Then in the winter, the nominating committee would have collected all those nominations and also done their own, whatever they need to do, and would come with recommendations to the board of directors for who should be on the slate for that election. And that then in the spring, about the same time we do now, the board would recommend the nominees for election and the members would vote and elect, and those elected would assume their office on August the 1st. So Kevin, I think that's what I need to do. And I'm going to let you come back over.
Right. Thanks, Mike, for the details of that. And just as a reminder to folks, we sent this out a while ago, and hopefully you had time to review it prior to coming to here. We allowed an ample opportunity for questions and suggestions, comments. We held a town hall, which had some attendees last week, I guess that was, and that was available for review as well. So hopefully everyone's had time to take a look at these if that's of interest to you. So at this time, I'm going to look through the chat here and check with Jim to see if we have any questions that are out there that we need to have answered. No? Okay. Are there any questions that you would like to put forth? If so, you can just put them in the chat there. That would be great, just so we don't have a free-for-all.
Or they can raise their hand and ask, I think, Jim, Kevin, if you want.
So there was a question from Joanna of how will this affect the budget? So really the only budgeting thing that would have would be for any in-person meetings that we have. We potentially could have more people than we have now, and our budget is set to handle that. And Jim and Mike have worked that through so that would be accounted for as part of the budget if it needed to be increased. Shouldn't be a terrible increase at any point in time, though. Joanna, if that didn't answer your question, please just add on there. All right, any other questions or comments that you would like to make? You can also raise your hand if you want.
The hand raise.
Use your hand raising function. I think we know how to do that now. Getting better, right? 2 years ago, you said that and people looked at you like you were speaking a foreign language. All right, then. I do not see any here. So with that all in mind, then my duty is for us to bring this to a vote so that we can hopefully move forward with this. So the recommendations have been put forth, as you've seen. There have been no changes to those since what we contributed or communicated to the membership several weeks ago. So you will be voting either to A, accept the amendments that we have proposed. B, if you really don't feel comfortable with them, we certainly don't want you to vote yes, you can vote no. And C, you can abstain if you really don't feel like you are in a yes/no position. So that's going to come up in a survey form on the screen, and you will fill that out according to how you would like to vote. Hopefully that will come up soon. There it is. So we'll give you a couple minutes to consider your vote.
If we could sing, you could sing the little.
Yes, I could sing the Jeopardy tune.
Yeah, that one.
Yes, yes. We committed to no singing for those of us in person, so we're trying to be safe. So we'll give this a couple minutes. We'll have awkward silence. You can all make faces in your Hollywood Squares boxes.
Wave to your friends.
Sue's laughing.
I'm
Hey
voting
there, hi
yes.
Sue.
Jim, are you counting me? I can't vote in the poll. I can't vote either. Are you able to vote?
I was able to vote, so yes, this is the one time I can vote.
I think everyone has voted, Kevin, because 43 have voted, and for those of us who can't vote.
There's one computer that can't vote, so yeah.
Okay, so we are all finished, so can we see the
Jim,
results?
do you want to
of
end
that?
the poll?
If we end the poll, we should get the results, and we had unanimous approval of the recommended changes to the bylaws. So thank you very much. And that is very exciting for those who are newer to the organization. Again, just reiterating how exciting these times are. Our membership has grown considerably by nearly 25% since Jim Rindelab has come back. Okay. Do we need a quorum for this? There is no quorum addressed. It was winning. It was whoever showed up.
We don't have a.
There's no quorum specified.
In our current bylaws, there is no number or percentage given for quorum. It's just whoever shows up.
Correct. All right. So anyway, a very exciting time. Membership has increased since Jim came on board as our executive director by nearly 25%, which is just tremendously huge. Our financial gifts and contributions have gone up significantly, which enable us to do more programming things. We've taken some bold steps in doing new programs that we think are reaching out to new and important areas that need help and assistance and support. We take our own stories and say, where can we best support each other? What would we have liked to have seen when we were new, and what would we like to see now support us? And we really want to focus in on that and make sure that our offerings and what we do as a board moving forward continue to support that so that we can equip and nurture those church musicians for years to come in the best way possible. So, Mike, yes? So yes, and I can go ahead and say, Mike referenced the election that we just had with the sad news that Bob Hobby, who is on with us tonight, hi Bob, had to step down in his president-elect role, which makes us very sad, although we certainly respect his decision and his need to be with family right now. And we so appreciate that his willingness to continue with us in some other projects that are going to be coming, and we'll be excited. So we rejoice in that. And we also rejoice in the fact that we had two very fine candidates who did run for that election spot for the president-elect. And I can announce, since that closed on Friday, I'm pleased to announce that Nancy Robbie is our new president-elect for ALCM, who will be taking the reins later this year from me. So Nancy, congratulations and welcome to chaos, as we say, right? It's fun chaos, for sure. All right. Yes, congratulations and lots of prayers and best wishes for Bob and Jenny as well. So that concludes our business. That was all we had to do tonight. So thank you for taking time out of your Martin Luther King Jr. Day to spend a few minutes with us to do this important work. Thanks to all those who served in the bylaw committees. We learned some new hidden talents, right, Arletta, of people who are in committees and what hidden talents they might have. Arletta is a fantastic editor. She can find anything wrong with anything. So we appreciate that. And for those who served in the bylaws, to Julie for running the bylaw group, and to all the several boards that have been talking about this for the past several years. A lot of good work, and this really is a momentous night. So I feel like a campaign speech, but it's really exciting. So thank you, and we look forward to the new exciting things that will be coming in 2022 and beyond. And have a good evening.